Yesterday we heard the Ten Commandments from Exodus chapter 20, and today we again have a chapter that speaks very much to what a life of holiness looks like from Leviticus chapter 19. Our verses for the day are verses 33 and 34, where God says, "When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them." The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Leviticus 19, as I said, describes a life of holiness, and there's some wonderful verses in there, beginning in verse 2, where God says, "You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." And throughout the chapter, we have a restating of the Ten Commandments that we heard in Exodus 20, with some additional commentary and specific examples being shared of what holiness looks like. For example, in Leviticus 19, in verses 9 and 10, in describing the proper way to harvest a crop, God tells them, when you reap the harvest of your field, don't reap to the very edges or strip a vineyard bare. Leave them for the poor, for the foreigner or the alien to come so that they can get some food. And later on, we're going to have a biblical story in the book of Ruth that illustrates that very principle. In Leviticus 19, there's an appeal to justice and the importance that justice be equal for the poor as well as for the great. And then in verse 8, we hear a very, very famous verse in the Bible. Leviticus 19:8 is where we hear, "You are to love your neighbor as yourself." A passage that in the Gospels Jesus will say is one of the two most critical statements of Scripture on which hang all the law and the prophets. It's very important in our own time when, again, there are all kinds of political divisions around how we treat foreigners who live among us. Leviticus is very clear with God stating how we are to treat foreigners in our midst, with the Jewish people being reminded, you yourself were once foreigners. And again, it's an illustration of we are to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. That's what holiness looks like in the Scriptures.